Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Engineering Moments podcast, where we discuss software engineering from a leadership lens. My guest today is Jáder Nunes. He's a senior software engineer, been doing this for a long time. And Jada, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot for joining and everybody. And I'm happy to be right here. I'm Jader. I've been a software engineer for I'm pretty sure it's been 13 years, and I've been an iOS developer for 11 years. Yeah, that's about me.
Awesome. So, Jada, today's topic is about feedback, and feedback is a really broad topic. So we're going to try and keep the focus around between feedback within the context of between developers, between themselves, and then obviously as well between your manager and the manager and the developer, right? So I think my first question for you would be how has how has feedback impacted you, um, positively or negatively, in recent times in terms of what what's the biggest thing you've taken out of uh, feedback that has been given to you, either positive or critical feedback.
Yeah, 100%. So I can talk about two ways here. One of the bad way of the people that gave me feedback in the past, but also something good that they said to me, or the way of how they gave the feedback and how it impacted my career. So for let's use the bad way first. So a long time, like one of my managers, they gave me like a feedback, or not just the feedback specifically, but of how they gave me the feedback, blocked me, it stopped me to bring something to the team. So they were pretty like huge, like on the way of how they talk. Like they was pretty. He used like hard words, like it was rude. He was a rude guy, so he used some not like good words. For example, hey Jeter, I know like you brought something to the team, so but let's probably not bring this stuff, this kind of stuff here. Let's probably use more the way of how the company does like this and that. So for me, kind of stopped me to bring something to the team, because as a manager, I believe actually, when somebody is bringing something to the team, doesn't matter what, like engineering stuff about architecture, new language that they learned, whatever, like, so let's say about the process as well, how the process could help the team if we change something a little bit here and there. So anything that anybody in the team can bring something, it's available, for the team, for the person, and for the company. So in that time, that it stopped me, and I was more, oh, should I have to bring this to the team? Oh, I'm not gonna fight or kind of fight, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna like create this uncomfortable thing with my manager. So I'm gonna just bring something that he likes, and that's it, you know. And for the opposite side, I don't know if you wanna say something about this, Hugo.
Yeah, yeah. I think putting my manager hat on, I can see what I understand is that your manager gave you some feedback and you took it personal, or he made it seem personal, or and it kind of killed your motivation. Um, I think that as a manager, you're taught to, like, well, maybe not taught, but experience tells you that what's the right word? It's called a something sandwich. I forget the name, but essentially you kind of wrap critical feedback, or negative feedback in like positive things, right? So thank you for bringing this stuff. This is all the really good things about it. But then you also want to point out specifically if something's not working, because like maybe from the manager's point of view, maybe that particular thing at that time maybe not priority, or maybe it isn't sort of the best way forward. But you have to acknowledge people's efforts and explain to them, oh well, this is why um, this thing is not working, but you want to ensure that you don't kill their enthusiasm, because I think that it's really important to have people in your team that show that initiative of bringing new ideas, and you want to encourage that as much as possible. And as a manager, it's your job to mold that and direct it to and sort of point it in the right direction. So yeah, I understand that feedback not given well is easy to take it's easy for the recipient to take it personal. um yeah, and like I completely understand what you mean.
Yeah, for sure. That's the reason, just because like that happened. Like one of the another thing that I believe here is the words that we use when we are giving
Hmm.
a feedback. Because as we just mentioned, like for 100%, especially it was like a long time ago. I was a junior guy. I was just starting my career, and when we are starting our career, we don't even understand all the whole thing, like the whole process, if it's good or if it's bad, or if it's the moment that we should have to bring something to the table. You know what I mean? So that's the real time when we are junior. The manager, that's the time they should actually like use the right words
Hmm.
to explain like the whole situation. So yeah, but for the let's talk about the good things, the good way of the thing that happened with me and improved myself. So also one of my experience before, one of the companies before, one of my leader, uh, they said we were pretty. It was like in the 360 feedback that we usually have in the companies. So they were talking about how we should give the feedback to each person, and at that time they were explaining like how we should treat even personal feedback to each person, like in our personal lives, or even at work, or even at a pull request reviews when we are uh, requesting something to somebody change like the code base. So the reason why it was pretty good, it was just before I was just, for example, asking to the person at the code base, hey, can you remove this file? Hey, can you remove this line? Hey, can you probably just uh, use like this? And without asking the person, hey, could you, like the words, could you just think twice about this? And have you thought about this like pattern that you have in place here? So the reason why I'm asking you is just because of this, and that. So explain to the person how, like the reason why you are explaining to the person, like you are asking the person to change the code base or to change what they've wrote. So it's important, explain the reason why, give your suggestion, and also make it a room for the person to say something back, because
Yeah,
sometimes like you made suggestion, you point the reason why, but sometimes the person has like they have their own like
they're
idea and
thinking exactly.
that I'm not like aware of. So you have to open the room for the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that code reviews are a really good opportunity for people to learn from each other. And like you say, it can be, developers can get really protective about their code, and as a result get really sensitive. So I like that sort of approach of, and there's certain different types of feedback, or different types of feedback you give in a code review. Some of them are like, oh well, we can't ship this stuff, we can't ship with this thing. And in that one, okay, maybe you're a bit more direct in terms of, oh well, this particular thing, we need to do it in a different way. You explain why, and then maybe you also, like you say, leave room for them to explain their thinking. But then there's other things that are more stylistic or preferential things, where it's like it's okay like this, but I feel like it's better in a different way, as opposed to, oh, we don't do this way. And in those ones, yeah, when you say, you want also to let them know, like, hey, have you thought about trying it this way? I find that maybe XYZ thing performs better when we go, when we use this approach and things like that. And I think that the language that you use in those scenarios make it can turn it from being a battle or sort of like a debate into an actual learning opportunity. So I think that that's one really key area and one really good use of feedback um, within a team and within feedback between peers. So this usually, I mean, depends on how you are as a manager. Some managers do code reviews, some don't. But most of the time it is between developers. So I think that, that's a good way for us to sort of talk about peer feedback, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned right now, like, okay, well, you said your manager gave you that idea of how to give feedback in a code review. But let's say between code review or even outside of code reviews, how have you gotten a lot of unprompted feedback from your peers, from your fellow developers?
Yeah, like to like yeah, most of the time, every day we receive a feedback. Like I've received the feedback, like every day, like from my peers. Like depends
Okay.
on like how deep we are talking about feedback here.
Okay.
But I believe like feedback from the peer itself. So I believe it's important, especially it's for me. It's connected with the time that we give like the
Hmm.
feedback, because for example, if one of my colleagues they were trying to, let's say, I don't know, use a different words in a daily basis. For example, here we do have like a lot of Brazilians work with companies in the United States. So at my team, it is like 6 folks from Brazil. So and I know the kind of words that we usually use here in Brazil sounds like normal, but when we are working with somebody else, like around of the world, we should like kind of understand the culture as well,
Okay.
for
Okay.
the person. And it's a very important. So I gave like a feedback to my colleague. So, hey, buddy, so sometimes like I know like for us here in Brazil, it's kind of normal when you kind of use some words that you usually use in our daily basis. But for the person, sometimes they are not like understand what that means in their context. Let's
Yeah.
say somebody from China, somebody from India. So it's like a different culture. Even like for the words that how we give a feedback, how we talk to the person, and how we complain, how we start a conversation with their like their own like team as well. So that's the reason why I mentioned like I suggested, hey, what do you think? We can talk to the person uh, like more in a polite way, asking the questions, like asking like how they could use this and that. So yeah, that's like how I usually end up doing feedback to my colleagues, and I especially usually use this like in a real time instead of just scheduling a time to talk and waiting for the time, because I'm 100% sure that later on they will forget about you know
Yeah. I think the timing is really crucial for feedback because I think as managers we're kind of wired to give feedback quickly. Um, but companies have this cadence of, like you say, 360, and maybe part of your 360 is that your peers, your teammates give you feedback. And I know that in some companies I've some teams I've seen that between teammates, I mean, yeah, they give feedback, but a lot of times you wait. A lot of people wait until I've seen people wait until it's time for the 360, and that's when they they say something, and then when when I'm speaking to my team and we're going through the feedback, and then some people are shocked because hey, I work with this guy every day, but he's never said this to me, and now I'm seeing it like what's up, so
Like,
so yeah, I think that that's something that I feel like needs to be encouraged more between developers to give feedback more quickly. Has that been hard for you to do, or have you worked with people where you felt like it was hard for them to either give feedback or even to receive it?
yeah, to be really, really honest, like my whole career, I felt like it was pretty hard for people to give you feedback in general because I just received feedback. Okay, there was an exceptions for sure
Hmm.
each time, but most of the time in general was I didn't receive feedback a lot. So like kind of it was not common to receive feedback. But I usually like as I think it's important, as I think for the way of how my colleagues and I like for example, the way of the reason why I'm talking about this is I think it's important to give you feedback kind of quite often because it will keep us close, with each other. It's like a team building, It's
Exactly.
important.
Exactly.
It's important to keep a closer relationship with everybody because if I give a feedback, not I'm not saying like the feedback is something bad. That's something also important. Like we should have to give you like positive feedback to everybody. For example, hey, you are improving your English pretty good. So that's something that I usually say to my colleagues here. Hey, you mentioned something. You used like the words pretty well. Let's keep doing. Hey, you used this pattern here. Let's share with everybody, with the large audience, so everybody can be aware of what we are into. So that was pretty good and important thing to keep everybody up. You know.
That part where you talk about like hearing, like giving feedback about technical things that people do and advising them to sort of share into a wider audience, and like that sort of is a way to get more feedback on stuff that you do, because when you share it you get to hear from more people. Sometimes that can be scary because I know in the past, like sometimes I write something and I'm like, hey, like why don't we share this with more people, and I'm like, I don't know if it's ready yet, or I don't you know I don't I'm not ready for the scrutiny. But yeah, you do make a good point. One of the things that I think is also really important here is using feedback as a tool for growth, right? So how do you how what have you seen or what have you done in your career when to make sure that you take feedback on, like the feedback you take on, that you actually use it to make yourself a better developer or at least a better team member?
Yeah, that's something very important for sure. 100%. I agree. And I think to grow in our career, it's something very, very practical. The way of how I usually do, I keep things like bullet points. Like I'm a bullet point person. So I usually have everything wrote here, like in the notes, in the document, whatever. So I usually keep track of my activities, of my goals for the next year, and what I've done. Did I achieve the goal or not? What I've missed? Because that's something totally normal for the person. Like sometimes we list, for example, 5 things, but we just, in the end of the year, we achieve 3 of them. And for the next year, those 2 that we've missed, it's not important anymore because we changed our goal and so on and so forth. Or at least, for example, when we are talking about the company, sometimes our manager, like they gave like some feedback, but we improved, and that's okay. It is achieved. We are gonna add something more. So that's how I treat feedback. I list everything that I'm gonna
Work on?
work work on next year and so on. So that's how I usually do here.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think for me, I'd say one of the, I mean, I usually have like, yeah, like big goals around, okay, based on all the feedback I've gotten, these are all my goals for the quarter or the year or whatever. But I think even some small things. I think that one of the most powerful things that I've learned is I got from feedback from one of my reports. Now, I want to say like sometimes when you're as a manager, you forget that your words have power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to do this thing where I'm on Slack and I'm chatting with people, and then something comes up and I want to speak to someone. I'm like, hey, I just ping them like, hey, let's jump on a call real quick. And I used to do that, and like it didn't seem like anything. And then one day someone just pointed out to me like, hey, Ugo, can you always tell me, like give me some context into what the call is about? And I was like, like I I wasn't I didn't really understand why. So I asked him like why. It's like because like people are scared because layoffs and things like that. And I'm like, oh my god, like that's actually true. It's like people, like you could just be asked to jump on a random call and that's the end of your job. So people might be panicking just because I'm asking them to jump on a call. And like I say, sometimes you don't realize that the strength that you have as a manager. And I started doing that, and I feel like I enjoy. I feel like people appreciate that more, and because I've since then I've asked people to learn a bit more about people's perception of that, and I can see that there's a lot of positive outlook on doing things that way. So like I said, this was just the small feedback that I received, and I was able to use that to sort of make myself a better manager and sort of work better within my team. So yeah, so it's not only the sort of the big goals. You also need to find those small things that you can pick and try to improve yourself. I think the last thing about feedback and talking about between a manager and a developer right now. Um, so I've had to, a manager and a report, because in my case, I've had several different types of managers, right? And I had a manager once who was very, should I say analytical, or no, he was very detail oriented, a bit too much. So it's like we'd come into a one-on-one and there'd be feedback on almost everything
Like
that I've done.
management.
Well, yeah, I think I was trying not to use that word, but maybe it's like there was feedback on every tiny thing, but not just even micromanage. It's almost like I believe that, like, for instance, people mess up sometimes, right? And if
Right.
you mess up but it's out of character, like if you're usually doing well and you mess up one time, we can talk about it, but I won't bring it up as a I don't want to bring it up as a big issue or a big talking point that, we can chat about it sort of outside the realms of, hey, are you okay? Like, is everything just not okay? Well, you did this on this day, and reiterate the standard, because, you need to cut people are human, right? You need to cut people some slack. So I've had that kind of manager. And to be honest, while I was I when it initially I just wanted to experience it because I didn't sort of tell him, or I don't like this or whatever, because I wanted to know if it would be good, if there was something good to come out of it or not. But in the end, I don't think that there was. And I've had managers who um give you feedback and sort of give you space to make errors and congratulate you when you do when you do well. So I want to know, like, what kind of relationship, sort of feedback wise, do you prefer with your manager?
Yeah, you made a good point here, Hugo. So that's something that I've experienced, and it's kind of connected with the another thing that we were talking before,
Okay.
which is kind of connected with the good and bad feedback. Because, for example, when I learned a lot was when my manager was showing like something as an example. So that's where I
Hmm.
learned like so much. So as a human, we learned from when we are a kid. We learned as an example. It's kind of the same thing. Well, it's a human thing. We learned from examples. So, and when my manager was showing, like, for example, you just mentioned here, oh, one of my peers, one of my employees, they gave me feedback, and I learned from there. So, and I showed them, oh, this was one of the mistakes that I've made. And for me, when I learned a lot was when my manager started saying, hey, this is what I learned in my life. For example, on one-on-ones, when we had one-on-ones, he was showing to me like some of examples. For example, how they used Jira, or for example, how they failed using Jira at that time, or like some of the process, or the mistakes that he made at his life, especially like in his personal life, not just at work, because that how and what made me uh, be more connected with him, just to really understand like what was his approach about, and so on and so forth. Like, for me, that was so important when he two kind of important points here that I can see. The first, he opened up his like kind of personal life, talking about his uh, uh, personal thoughts, like the reason why he thinks X, Y, and Z, and also like showing something that he made wrong. So, hey, that's how I can say something as well. So I can open up myself to my peers as well. Oh, my manager also do something wrong. So I can also show to my peers that I can do something wrong, and everybody can open like the room here to say, "Hey, I messed it up. So let's try to fix that together." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what do you mean? I think that I think one last thing, before we end, is, have you uh, how often do you give your manager feedback? Because that's really important.
Yeah, to be really honest here, the company that I'm working now at CNN, like I'm a contractor at
Hmm.
CNN. So, and at this time, I usually ask for feedback probably once a week, and it's not like even something that he must have to give you feedback, because it's not like something that in the contract and so on and so forth. And anyway, so I ask for feedback like most of the time, like once a week, but I also give you feedback to him to say, hey, this is something that I didn't feel well at that time because of this, and that. So uh, I do have some suggestions here. And did you? What was the reason why you used those terms, or what is the reason why you said that to the team? So there was a reason that I'm not aware of. So should I have to do something different? So that was kind of the conversation that I usually have with my manager. And I ask him like once a week, to be really, really honest, probably, yeah, twice a week, sometimes like in the middle of the week. Yeah, I usually ask for feedback, and I give feedback a lot, because I think it's important. I don't, to be really honest here, I don't let anything to the next day. That's what I would say, and I would um, give as a suggestion. So don't stay with something with you that you feel it's not good. So share, because probably it's just the way of how you thought. So
Yeah,
if you share, if you say something to your manager, hey, do you think you can improve this? Oh yeah, for sure. I was not aware that you were pissed off with this. Let's probably something change, you know?
yeah. It's been a good, 30 minutes talking to you, Jada. Really good to see you again. And thank you for all of your insights on feedback. I hope that the people watching are able to learn something, maybe learn some new approaches to feedback. And, I wish you all the best in what you're doing right now.
Thanks, Hugo. Thanks for having me.
Okay, have a nice day. Bye.
Bye bye.